This is Community Radio Networks. Let's go ahead and get started with this lovely Monday morning. It is today the 1st of July, a new month, a new half of the year. Plenty to tell you to get you caught up. And we'll start with the world news. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabna Madgil. French voters headed to the polls yesterday for the first round of parliamentary elections. Exit polls showing the Nationalist Populist National Rally in the lead with 33% of the voters. Turnout approached 70%, the highest in 40 years. French President Emmanuel Macron called snap elections last month when the National Rally defeated centrists in the European Union's parliamentary elections. Observers suggest that decision backfired with Macron's centrists Together for the Republic coalition now trailing in third place after the left-wing New Popular Front. The votes of young people could be the deciding factor in the second round of the parliamentary elections in France. Many are disappointed with President Macron, and French voters, though, flocked to the polls in numbers not seen for decades yesterday for the first round of snap parliamentary elections, which could see the far-right party of Marine Le Pen take power in a historic first. Hurricane Beryl is strengthened into a Category 4 hurricane yesterday, becoming the earliest on record to reach Category 4 status in the Atlantic. The storm will pass directly over St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada also this morning. The first hurricane of the season, Beryl rapidly picked up steam over the open ocean, intensifying from a tropical depression to a major hurricane in 42 hours. Meteorologists credited record warm ocean surface temperatures in the region with fueling this system. Beryl is expected to cross the Caribbean Sea midweek, potentially making landfall in Jamaica on Wednesday before continuing on to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The Supreme Court is set to rule today on whether a president is immune from prosecution over official acts conducted while in the White House. The case stems from former President Trump's challenge to 4 felony charges over alleged interference with the 2020 election. His legal team maintains current and former presidents must be impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate before facing criminal prosecution, an argument rejected by lower courts. Justices' questions during oral arguments in April suggest the court is unlikely to rule in favor of absolute immunity, but may consider partial immunity. The Supreme Court this morning expected to issue its long-anticipated ruling on whether former President Trump can claim immunity from prosecution for at least some of his actions in seeking to overturn the 2020 election. And the Supreme Court's final day of the term is today, when it issues this critical decision on whether the former president has immunity from prosecution for his actions related to the January 6th insurrection, also at the U.S. Capitol. As early as this morning, we will know whether former President Trump has immunity from criminal prosecution. The case, Trump versus United States, involves special counsel Jack Smith's efforts to hold Trump accountable for his alleged role in those riots at the U.S. Capitol. After a bad debate performance that forced him to defend his re-election campaign, President Biden's family has encouraged him to remain in the 2024 presidential race. Yesterday, he gathered with his family at Camp David in what was a pre-planned trip, a chance for the entire family, children and grandchildren included, to take a family photo, and a timely opportunity for a private meeting among the people who are perhaps the most influential in his life. His family played a key role in his decision to run in 2020. Donald Trump's former top advisor, Steve Bannon, has told BBC he does not fear going to prison or watching the former president's 2024 campaign from behind bars. After being convicted of contempt of Congress, the man who was seen as the power behind the scenes in the White House at the start of Trump's presidential term in 2017 will report to a federal prison in Connecticut this morning. NASA's Odyssey spacecraft, the longest-running mission at Mars, circled the red planet for the 100,000th time today. To celebrate this milestone, the space agency released an intricate panorama of Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system. Odyssey captured the view in March. Oklahoma's top education official ordered public schools to incorporate the Bible into lessons for grades 5th through 12th, the latest effort by conservatives to incorporate religion into classrooms, and the directive has drawn immediate condemnation from civil rights groups and supporters of the separation of church and state, with some calling it an abuse of power and a violation of the U.S. Constitution. Pete Arredondo, the former police chief of the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, was arrested more than 2 years after the 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting. He was booked into the Uvalde County Jail on 10 counts of child endangerment. He was released from custody after posting $10,000 in bonds, one for each of the counts. And Simone Biles is heading to the Olympics for a third time in a triumphant comeback to gymnastics after withdrawing from the 2020 Tokyo Olympics for mental health reasons. She will travel to Paris as favorite to bookend the all-round Olympic gold she won in 2016. Several U.S. military bases across Europe are now operating under a heightened state of alert. The alert level of force protection condition, Charlie, was put in place over the weekend. According to the U.S. Army, Charlie is the second highest state of alert that applies when an incident occurs or intelligence is received indicating some form of terrorist action or targeting against personnel or facilities is likely. And when Hungary takes over the helm of the European Union today, many politicians in Brussels will have the same thing on their minds, whether populist Prime Minister Viktor Orban will use the role to further his reputation as the bloc's main spoiler. In recent years, he has seemed to relish opportunities to block, water down, or delay key European Union decisions, routinely going against the grain of most other leaders on issues like the war in Ukraine, relations with Russia and China, and efforts to defend democracy and the rule of law. Storms in Switzerland and northern Italy have caused extensive flooding and landslides, leaving at least 4 people dead. And the bodies of 3 were recovered following a landslide in the Fontana area of the Maggia Valley in the Italian-speaking Ticino canton on the southern side of the Alps. And storms and heavy rain pounded southern and western Switzerland. A video gaming Italian teenager will become the Catholic Church's first millennial saint after his cause for canonization was approved by church authorities. Carlo Acutis, who died from leukemia in 2006 at the age of 15, was renowned for using his computing skills to spread awareness of the Catholic faith and earned the nickname God's Influencer. Being recognized as a saint in the Catholic Church can take decades, but the cause of Acutis has moved swiftly, with the teenager developing a devoted following across the world. Heavy battles and bombardment hit Gaza City's Shujaiya district for a 4th day yesterday, months after Israel declared Hamas's command structure dismantled in the northern area. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have fled the devastated neighborhood, where the army said it has fought Palestinian fighters both above and below ground in tunnels. The Israeli military said ground and air forces had carried out raids on compounds used by fighters and eliminated several terrorists over the past 24 hours. The Israeli army released the director of the Al-Shifa medical complex in Gaza City after more than 7 months of detention following a military operation at the hospital last November. Dr. Muhammad Abu Salmiya was among 50 Palestinians who were released across the eastern border of central and southern Gaza. And violent clashes broke out in Jerusalem between Israeli police and ultra-Orthodox Jews as thousands of Haredim protested attempts to draft them into the army. And the Israeli army, meanwhile, said it carried out overnight air and artillery strikes on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanese towns. The Arab League says it has decided to remove Hezbollah from its blacklist as conditions for establishing relations with the Lebanese resistance movement have been met. The Taliban government has urged the world to lift the sanctions imposed on Afghanistan, even though the Kabul government fails to address global concerns over the grim situation of human rights and girls' education in the country. In his inaugural remarks at the Doha talks, Afghan Taliban spokesperson Zaibullah Mujahid, who is leading the delegation attending the Doha talks, said the process of easing financial and trade sanctions has been slow, leading to several challenges for the Afghan government as well as the private sector. Ahead of the talks, the delegation met with representatives from the UN, Russia, Pakistan, India, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Uzbekistan. And Iran will hold a runoff presidential election, pitting a little-known reformist against a hardline former nuclear negotiator, after results released this weekend showed the lowest-ever poll turnout in the Islamic Republic's history. More than 60% of voters cast no ballot in the race that saw reformist Masoud Pezeshkian best Saeed Jalili, who competed there alongside 2 hardliners. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced his new cabinet, allocating ministerial posts to business-friendly opposition politicians while retaining close allies as finance minister and signaling his intent to revive anemic economic growth. The announcement of the new executive came a month after the African National Congress lost its parliamentary majority in the elections and was forced to invite its rivals to join a broad coalition government. Almost a dozen parties accepted the offer and agreed to back Ramaphosa's reappointment as president in exchange for being allocated other posts. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has included 7 different parties in his cabinet in an unprecedented power-sharing agreement in the continent's most industrialized country after the African National Congress lost its parliamentary majority in this milestone election result in late May. And female suicide bombers targeted a wedding, a funeral, and a hospital in coordinated attacks in northern Nigeria that killed at least 18 people. No one immediately claimed responsibility for these attacks in Borno State, which has been heavily affected by the insurgency launched in 2009 by Boko Haram. Mark Rutte, the outgoing Prime Minister of the Netherlands and future Secretary General of NATO, called for continued support for Ukraine in his farewell speech to Dutch lawmakers yesterday. He said that the shooting down of the passenger flight MH17 by a Russian missile over eastern Ukraine in the summer of 2014 made him realize how crucial it is that our country is embedded in the European Union and NATO. Most of those 298 people killed on board the flight, which was headed from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, were Dutch citizens. Ukrainian President Zelensky has welcomed the return of Ukrainian prisoners from Russia, including Nariman Dzalial, a leader of the Crimean Tatars. 10 civilians plus 90 soldiers were released this week, he said in a video message. This brought to 3,310 prisoners released to Ukraine from Russian prisons. President Zelensky has complained about ongoing Russian bombing, though, and once again asked the West for more help with air defense. He has called on his country's Western supporters to give the Ukrainian military a free hand to strike back at Russia, given the increasing number of Russian airstrikes on his country. Vladimir Putin plans to send Russian children to a summer camp in North Korea, where activists include polishing the statues of leaders. And it is North Korea that has test-fired 2 ballistic missiles today, but one of them possibly flew abnormally, a day after the North vowed offensive and overwhelming responses to a new U.S. military drill with South Korea and Japan. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement the missiles were launched 10 minutes apart in a northeasterly direction from the town of Jangyeon in southeastern North Korea. A Chinese aircraft carrier reportedly patrolled the waters of the Philippines in an operation that observers say was a message to Manila and Washington. The aircraft carrier is widely believed to be the Shandong, China's most advanced aircraft carrier in service, detected sailing northwest from the Philippine island of Luzon in the South China Sea. And foreigners who are permanent residents of Hong Kong and Macau and are looking to visit mainland China can apply for multiple entry travel visas with validity of 5 years from the 10th of this month. China is likely to detain more Taiwanese people under a law that targets supporters of independence in a bid to pile pressure on the new president. And a Chinese rocket, meanwhile, crashed after being accidentally launched during a ground test yesterday. According to its company Space Pioneer, the crash happened when the first stage of the Tianlong 3 rocket detached from its launch pad during a test due to structural failure and landed in a hilly area of the city of Gongyi in central China. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. India pulled off a sensational 7-run win against South Africa in a gripping final of the 2020 World Cup. South Africa, playing its first ever final of an ICC tournament, needed a ball 30 to win on the back of Heinrich Klaasen's belligerent 52 of 27 balls. But Jasprit Bumrah, Arshdeep Singh and Hardik Pandya, who shared 7 wickets between them, roared back in the death overs to cut down South Africa to 169 for 8. And Kohli's first half-century of the tournament in what he later revealed was his last T20 international anchored India to 176 for 7 after Captain Rohit Sharma Sharma won the toss and elected to bat. India won its second T20 World Cup, but its first world title in 13 years. The frustration had been building over the past 12 months. India lost the World Test Championship final and, most grueling, the 50-over World Cup final at home. But South Africa's heartbreak is on another level. It reached the final unbeaten, as did India, and looked to finally end its World Cup hoodoo. Colour and noise filled India's streets as the country celebrated its cricket team's dramatic triumph at the Men's T20 World Cup, defeating South Africa by just 7 runs in that final. For a cricket-obsessed nation where the team are national celebrities and the sport is played everywhere, it has been a long 13-year wait without a World Cup trophy. India greats Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma announced they had played their last T20 international after India's thrilling 7-run win over South Africa in Barbados. And star batsman Kohli put a run of low scores behind him to make 76 as he was named player of the match, with the 35-year-old saying afterwards, "This was my last T20 World Cup and this is what we wanted to achieve." India will name their new coach after the World Cup winning team makes its triumphant return from the Caribbean, but unclear when that will be because of a hurricane. The frontrunners appear to be Gautam Gambhir, a 42-year-old former batsman who scored over 10,000 international runs across 3 formats and most recently coached the Kolkata Knight Riders to the IPL crown. In his maiden address as Army Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi said the Indian Army faces unique operational challenges and it is crucial that we continue to evolve our warfighting strategies. A day after taking over as India's 30th Army Chief, General Upendra Dwivedi drew attention to the unique operational challenges confronting the force, even as he underlined the need to remain prepared for the emerging threats and called for equipping soldiers with modern weapons and technology. He touched upon indigenization of military hardware, synergy among the 3 services, and welfare measures for soldiers as well as their families. The Indian Army faces unique operational challenges, and to remain prepared for such threats and distinctive requirements, it is crucial that we continually equip our soldiers with state-of-the-art weapons and technology and continue to evolve our war-fighting strategies, he said after inspecting a guard of honor. He has assumed charge at a time when the military standoff between India and China in the Ladakh sector is now in its 5th year. Steps are being taken to create theater commands for the best use of the military's resources to fight future wars. Indigenization of military hardware is one of the foremost priorities for the government, and some NDA allies have called for a review of the Agnipath scheme for the short-term recruitment of soldiers. The Rajya Sabha observed a minute's silence for the 1985 bombing of Air India Flight 182. For the 329 victims of that deadly bombing of Air India Flight 182 in 1985 by Khalistani elements, once again expressing India's concerns about terrorism. 2 Air India aircrafts flying out of Canada were targeted by terrorists, and 329 innocent people lost their lives when Air India 182 Kanishka was blown up off Ireland on the 23rd of June in 1985. 2 more people were killed as another major catastrophe was narrowly averted in Japan. The opposition demanded a separate one-day discussion on the NEET paper leak row in the lower house of Parliament. The ruling NDA and Congress-led India bloc's deadlock continued today, with the latter walking out of the Lok Sabha over its demand for a discussion on the raging NEET row. The opposition demanding this discussion in the lower house of Parliament, and on the other hand, the government wanted to continue the motion of thanks on the President's address to Parliament. Leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi demanded that the Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla allow this discussion on the roll over the alleged irregularities in NEET 2024, claiming over 2 crore students had been affected by those paper leaks. And during this dramatic session of the Lok Sabha today, Rahul Gandhi raised eyebrows with his pointed remarks directed at Speaker Om Birla, while emphasizing the impartiality required of that position. We do also have in the Lok Sabha that Leader of the opposition criticized the ruling BJP, claiming those who call themselves Hindus are engaged in violence and hate constantly, and this sparked massive protests from the treasury benches. Prime Minister Modi responded, saying that labeling the entire Hindu community as violent is a serious matter. TMC's Mahua Moitra followed leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi to attack sharply on the ruling BJP as well as Prime Minister Modi. The second week of the first session of the 18th Lok Sabha commenced this morning after being adjourned on Friday amid tussles between the NDN and the India bloc leaders. It is expected that today's parliament debate will see the stormy discussion regarding the NEET row. The Lok Sabha has allocated 16 hours for the debate on the motion of thanks today. The deadly roof collapse at India's busiest airport is the latest in a string of recent infrastructure disasters in the country, raising safety questions as Prime Minister Modi spends billions of dollars to improve transportation across the country. A deadly roof collapse at India's busiest airport is added to a series of recent infrastructure disasters. Officials at Delhi's airport cancelled operations at Terminal 1 after an outdoor metal canopy collapsed during torrential rainfall. Multiple cars were crushed outside the airport, which was recently renovated, killing one person and injuring 8, and the area recorded its heaviest one-day June rainfall in 88 years that day. In Assam, 44 people died and over 262,000 people have been affected due to floods, storms and landslides this year. Prime Minister Modi spoke with Assam's Chief Minister Himant Biswa Sarma to inquire about the flood situation in the northeastern state and assured full cooperation from the central government. The flood situation has worsened across several districts of Assam, with 5 major rivers, including the Brahmaputra, flowing above the danger level mark. And according to the Indian Meteorological Department's website, the Kashmir Valley has witnessed higher than usual temperatures this summer. The mercury has risen 32.7 degrees Celsius, which was 3.1 notches above the season's normal. And we do also have Kashmir schools getting 10-day summer vacation due to these rising temperatures. Nida Dar will lead Pakistan in the upcoming Women's T20 Asia Cup, which will be held in Dambulla in Sri Lanka from the 19th through the 28th of this month. And Pakistan's Hamza Khan put on a show for the home crowd as he clinched the boys' under-19 title at the finals of the 31st Asian Junior Squash Championship in Islamabad. Last year's World Junior Champion cruised to victory over Malaysia's third seed, Harith Daniel, in 3 straight sets, 11-5, 12-10, and 11-9. At least 8 people were killed and over 2 dozen injured and 300 mud houses damaged as heavy pre-monsoon rains starting this weekend lashed different parts of Balochistan. And Met officials say that Karachi's monthly average temperature remained 4 degrees Celsius higher than average during the ongoing heat wave. High levels of humidity make weather very difficult to bear also, and the city remained in the grip of sweltering weather conditions for the 8th consecutive day yesterday on account of continued disruption of the sea breeze caused by a low atmospheric pressure area prevailing over southeast of Karachi. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you, but I do have your financial news coming up in a separate segment. Stay tuned right here. We are halfway through 2024, and as we start this second half of the year, we start a new month today. It is the 1st of July, and of course, our new week. Welcome to this lovely Monday morning. Your financial news now here for you on Community Radio Networks. A boom in artificial intelligence fueled a blistering first half for the U.S. stock market, and traders expect to see the same and more in the remainder of the year. The S&P 500 index has climbed 14% since the beginning of January, notching its second-best stretch of records to start a year this century, thanks to a resilient economy, improved corporate earnings, and torrid demand for companies linked to AI. Even with signs of economic cooling, the rally is setting help there from a Federal Reserve that's considering when to trim rates after the most disruptive tightening campaign in decades. U.S. stock futures edging into the green this morning, and they are starting the quarter on the front foot as political turmoil in France has gripped investors, counting down to the July 4th break and the key U.S. jobs report. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 both nudged up roughly 0.2%, and contracts on the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 were about 0.1% higher. A crucial week of labor market data will greet investors during a holiday-shortened trading week that begins the month of July today, the third quarter, the second half of 2024. And for the last few weeks, global oil prices have been gaining strength. The last working day of June, which was on Friday, crude oil settled little changed after retreating from a nearly two-month high. However, for the month, both the crude benchmarks Brent as well as West Texas Intermediate registered gains of around 6%. A federal judge ruled that the majority of a lawsuit filed by the U.S. SEC against Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, can proceed. And the core personal consumption expenditures price index increased just a seasonally adjusted 0.1% for the month and was up 2.6% from a year ago. Boeing agreed to buy back Spirit AeroSystems for $4.7 billion in stock, and Airbus moved to take on the supplier's loss-making Europe-focused activities in return for hundreds of millions of dollars of compensation following months of talks. The near two-decade independence of the world's largest standalone aerostructure company ended in a carve-up between its largest customers after the latest Boeing 737 MAX crisis, sparked by a mid-air door plug blowout in January that brought to a head doubts over the resilience of fuselage manufacturing. Boeing, which spun off Spirit in 2005, said it would repurchase its former subsidiary for $37.25 per share, giving it an enterprise value of $8.3 billion, including debt. Boeing will soon know whether its horrible 2024 is about to get much worse. Justice Department officials have to decide by the 7th of this month whether to criminally charge Boeing, which would be a devastating blow for a giant manufacturer, or reach some sort of a settlement. The question is whether Boeing's actions leading up to that January door plug blowout aboard the Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 will cause the Department of Justice to revoke legal protections that it extended to Boeing in a deferred prosecution agreement in January of 2020. For months, missing paperwork has hindered the investigation into how that door plug blew off the flight, making it difficult to find out who made the near-tragic mistake. And this week, Boeing disclosed that the paperwork may have caused the problem in the first place. Tesla's June quarter deliveries likely fell 3.7%, the first time the top EV maker is set to post two straight quarters of decline as it deals with stiff competition in China and slow demand due to a lack of affordable new models. The company is expected to deliver 438,019 vehicles for the April to June period, and 7 of them have slashed expectations in the past 3 months out of all the estimate-based forecast. Nike stock fell nearly 20% last week after the retailer said it expects revenue to decline more than it previously thought in the coming year. Google is testing facial recognition technology for office security to help prevent unauthorized individuals from gaining access to their campuses. And the initial test is taking place at one of Alphabet's sites in Kirkland, Washington, a Seattle suburb. Time has struck a multi-year content licensing deal in strategic partnership with OpenAI. The deal with the Microsoft-backed parent of ChatGPT is part of a broader effort by Time to expand access to its content to younger and more diverse audiences globally. The company removed its digital paywall last year, citing that same reason. And Amazon plans to launch a new section of on its site dedicated to low-priced fashion and lifestyle items that will allow Chinese sellers to ship directly to U.S. consumers. The storefront, announced at an invite-only conference for Chinese sellers last week, will mark Amazon's most aggressive attempt yet to fend off growing competition from e-commerce upstarts Temu and Shein, which both have ties to China, the world's second-largest economy. Temu and Shein have expanded their presence in the U.S. in recent years, luring an increasing share of American shoppers with their rock-bottom prices on clothing, electronics, home goods, and other products. Chewy Inc.'s stock price surged 28% in pre-market trading this morning after Keith Gill, the stock influencer known as Roaring Kitty, disclosed a 6.6% stake in the U.S. pet store. And Redbox's owner, Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, filed for bankruptcy protection overnight. This comes at the tail end of a month in which the DVD rental company defaulted on loans, saw an order for its cars to be repossessed, and missed payroll for employees. Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment informed employees of this filing, writing that it had filed for a debtor-in-possession loan, a way for companies that are reorganizing after filing for bankruptcy to secure additional working capital to meet their payrolls. There's joy all around as Disney Pixar's Inside Out 2 has crossed the coveted $1 billion milestone at the worldwide box office with $1,014 through 19 days. This is the quickest time to the mark for an animated movie ever, besting the previous record holder Frozen 2, which got there in 25 days. Only 11 animated films have ever crossed the $1 billion threshold, and of those, Disney and Pixar combined now have 8. And the running domestic total of $469.3 million, Inside Out 2 has jumped up to the all-time animated chart in North America, also now at number 5 after topping Toy Story 3, The Lion King, Toy Story 4, and Shrek 2. Coldplay returned to the Glastonbury Festival for a record 5th time as Michael J. Fox performed on stage with the band, and celebrities including Tom Cruise watched from the crowd. Cyndi Lauper faced sound problems during her set with issues affecting her vocals and timing, but she persevered through the performance with the support of the crowd. And Afro beats, a genre originating from Nigeria and Ghana, has rapidly gained popularity since the 2010s, with artists like Burna Boy and Ira Starr making history by performing on Glastonbury's main stage. Lay off of my blue suede shoes, sings Elvis Presley in his well-known cover of Carl Perkins' hit song. The person who just purchased a pair of the King's own blue suedes for more than $150,000 probably feels the same way. He wore this pair of shoes in the 50s, according to the Henry Aldridge and Son auction house. And Jimmy Velvet, founder of the Elvis Presley Museum and one of Elvis's friends, authenticated those shoes. One notable time Elvis wore the shoes was during a performance on the Steve Allen Show on the 1st of July in 1956, when he mentioned wearing them before singing "I Want You, I Need You, I Love You" when he left for the U.S. Army 2 years later and gave those shoes to his close friend, Alan Fortas. According to a recall posted by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, certain chaise lounge chairs made by Sinmar have a backrest that can unexpectedly descend with force. When adjusting the backrest while seated, the adjustable backrest can unexpectedly descend with force, posing finger crushing and amputation hazard. Sinmar has received 3 reports of incidents in which people's fingers were trapped between the adjustable backrest and the chair frame. 2 people had partial finger amputation injuries, and 1 finger-crushing injury required surgery. About 70,000 of these chairs are affected in this recall. Millions of Costco members and people who they get let tag alone love the wholesale retailer for deals on everything from bottled water to washing machines, and now Costco is entering a new arena: housing. According to multiple reports, an area of Los Angeles in California, once known as the Jungle, is soon expected to be the site of a new type of Costco project. SF Gate said this week that the approved project at Coliseum in Baldwin Village in Crenshaw is a novel new approach to residential construction that could become a test drive for future projects. The family of former U.S. Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson has announced an agreement with the Dallas Rehabilitation Center over her death. And it is in Dallas that Baylor Scott and White Institute for Rehabilitation agreed to an unspecified donation to the Eddie Bernice Johnson Lives Foundation, naming a nursing scholarship in the name of the trailblazing Texas congresswoman. She was the first black chief psychiatrist nurse at the Dallas VA hospital, became the first black woman to chair the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, and led the Congressional Black Caucus also. It happened suddenly when all 5 Alamo Drafthouse locations in Dallas closed their doors and shut down operations after the chain's owners filed for bankruptcy. Fear not, though, movie lovers, Alamo Drafthouse is back. They announced that all 5 locations in the DFW area would be reopening, and though no official date has been set yet, Alamo Drafthouse representatives say it would be sometime this summer before officially opening, though Alamo Drafthouse will hold soft openings for the theaters and will offer promotions and discounts to moviegoers. For those who are owed ticket refunds due to the sudden closings, the company says they will give out free ticket vouchers. So this is all 5 locations of Alamo Drafthouse reopening. Crescent Regional Hospital in Lancaster could very well be the first hospital in the U.S. that will allow doctors to visit with patients using a hologram. Imagine the HIPAA violations if their Wi-Fi gets hacked. The hospital has installed HoloBox, a 3D system that projects a life-size hologram of a doctor so that they can perform real-time consults with patients at a clinic 30 miles away. The system is designed by the Dutch company HoloConnects. And Crescent Regional Hospital CEO Raji Kumar said that there's so much artificial intelligence, robotic technology, and so many things. So she's super excited of being able to bring some of this technology to North Texas. And it is European stocks that have snapped a 4-day losing streak, and the euro strengthened as investors took French election results as a sign that the nation may be headed for political gridlock. Meanwhile, almost 7 years after picking up Bombardier Inc.'s troubled C-Series aircraft program for next to nothing, Airbus is going discount shopping once more, and this time for assets being offloaded by Spirit Aerosystems for a symbolic $1 price tag. The European plane maker will also get a sweetener to the tune of $559 million from Spirit to take on its wing plant in Belfast in Northern Ireland, as well as factories in Kinston, North Carolina, and Saint Nazaire in France that supply its A350 wide-body model. A cross-border trucker-led convoy will be rolling through parts of West Texas today to spotlight everything from violence against drivers, low wages, to poor working conditions in both Mexico and the U.S. The convoy, a joint action between the U.S.-based Truckers Movement for Justice and the Mexico-based United Mexican Carriers and the Binational Carriers Union, consists of 75 truckers from both sides of the border on a 150-mile trek from Odessa in Texas through Kermit and Monahans in Texas. Australia dealt a severe blow to international students today by raising visa application fees by 125% to boost the integrity of its 4th largest export and help slow overall migration. Japanese scientists have used human cells to develop an equivalent to living skin that can be attached to robotic surfaces to flash a realistic, if creepy, smile. The University of Tokyo researchers published their findings this week, along with a video of the gooey-looking pink material being stretched into an unsettling grin. Used a skin-forming, cell-laden gel to create a robot covered with living skin. In India, the Finance Ministry today praised the Goods and Services Tax, the GST system, on the occasion of its 7th anniversary, highlighting its role in lowering taxes on essential items such as household appliances and mobile phones. And the main issue in SEZs, meanwhile, is that we are not able to get economies of scale, and the connect between SECs and the domestic tariff area or domestic market has to be improved. 97.87% return on the 2000 rupee notes, and India's economy A to Z. There, the PMI rises to 58.3 last month from 57.5 in May, and the Reserve Bank of India aims to get inflation down to 4%. Incomplete transmission of policy rates could actually delay the reversal of the rate cycle by the Reserve Bank of India. And India's GDP calculation set for an upgrade as the panel is there to revise the base year. Confident of over $800 billion exports in goods there and services also this fiscal year, according to Piyush Goyal. Meanwhile, India's World Cupping winning cricket team will share prize money of nearly $15 million, according to the National Cricket Board, as a reward for their talent, determination, and sportsmanship. Of course, India won that thrilling final by 7 runs in Barbados on Saturday to clinch their first major title since the 2013 Champions Trophy. And Jay Shah, the Secretary of the Board of Control for Cricket in India, announced this hefty award, which will be shared between around 25 people, the entire team, including coaches and support staff. And if split equally, that works out to roughly $600,000 each. The cash prize is in addition to the International Cricket Council record pool of $11.25 million for the tournament. And India's winner of the competition will share this part from that of $2.45 million along with bonuses. And South Africa will share $1.28 million for finishing as runners-up. To meet a prior action of the International Monetary Fund, the government in Islamabad notified an increase of about 9% in gas rates for industrial captive power units starting today. Faced with an expected $20 billion external financing gap, Pakistan is desperate to attract as many forex inflows as possible in the new fiscal year. Beginning today, however, its time-tested friend China isn't willing to pour in new funds unless it ensures foolproof security for Chinese projects and workers in Pakistan. Auto sector players are optimistic about China's BYD entering Pakistan in collaboration with the Hub Power Company Limited, Hubco, to locally assemble electric vehicles which could benefit exports. Headline inflation for last month clocked in at 12.6% on the year, according to the data from the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, and shares of the Pakistan Stock Exchange climbed more than 700 points in intraday trade today on expectations of lower inflation numbers. PMLN-led coalition government began the new fiscal year today with an increase in petrol and high-speed diesel prices for the next fortnight. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you, but I do have the final segment of our program coming up for you next. Stay with me right here on Community Radio Networks. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is the 1st of July, and we are going to tell you about some of the stories that happened on today's date. One of the largest military conflicts in North American history began on today's date in the year 1863 when Union and Confederate forces collided at Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, and that epic battle lasted 3 days and resulted in a retreat to Virginia by Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. 2 months prior to Gettysburg, Lee had dealt a stunning defeat to the Army of the Potomac at Chancellorsville in Virginia. He then made plans for a northern invasion in order to relieve pressure on war-weary Virginia and to seize the initiative from the Yankees. His army, numbering about 80,000, began moving on the 3rd of June, and the Army of the Potomac, commanded by Joseph Hooker and numbering just under 100,000, began moving shortly thereafter, staying between Lee and Washington, D.C. But on the 28th of June, frustrated by the Lincoln administration's restrictions on his autonomy as commander, Hooker resigned and was replaced by George Meade. It was the Battle of Gettysburg that began on today's date in the year 1863. And the Autonomous Dominion of Canada, a confederation of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the future provinces of Ontario and Quebec, is officially recognized by Great Britain with the passage of the British Northern American Act on the 1st of July, later to be known as Canada Day. During the 19th century, colonial independence gave way to increasing autonomy for a growing Canada. And in 1841, Upper and Lower Canada, now known as Ontario and Quebec, were made a single province by the Act of Union. It was on today's date, the 1st of July in 1867, the Autonomous Dominion of Canada that officially recognized by Great Britain with the passage of the British North America Act, Canada Day. As part of its campaign to capture Spanish-held Santiago de Cuba on the southern coast of Cuba, the U.S. Army 5th Corps engages Spanish forces at El Caney and San Juan Hill on today's date in 1898. A month after the outbreak of the Spanish-American War, a Spanish fleet docked in the Santiago de Cuba harbor after racing across the Atlantic from Spain, and a superior U.S. naval force arrived soon after and blockaded the harbor entrance. And in June, the U.S. Army 5th Corps landed on Cuba with the aim of marching to Santiago and launching a coordinated land and sea assault on the Spanish stronghold. Included among the U.S. ground troops were the Theodore Roosevelt-led Rough Riders, a collection of Western cowboys and Eastern blue bloods, officially known as the 1st U.S. Voluntary Cavalry. The Battle of San Juan on the 1st of July in 1898. And by the 3rd of July, the Spanish fleet was destroyed off Santiago by U.S. warships under Admiral William Sampson, and the Spanish surrendered the city, and thus Cuba came to the Americas. At 7:30 a.m. on the 1st of July in 1916, the British launched a massive offensive against German forces in the Somme River region of France. During the preceding week, 250,000 Allied shells had pounded German positions near the Somme, and 100,000 British soldiers poured out of their trenches and into no man's land on the 1st of July, expecting to find the way cleared for them. It was the Battle of Somme that began on today's date in 1916. And on the 1st of July 1942, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is brought to a standstill in the battle for control of North Africa. The first battle of El Alamein begins. The British had already succeeded in driving him into a defensive position in Libya, but he repelled the repeated air and tank attacks, delivering heavy losses to the armored strength of the British, and finally, using his panzer divisions, managed to force a British retreat. A retreat so rapid that a huge quantity of supplies was left behind. In fact, Rommel managed to push the British into Egypt using mostly captured vehicles. It was the Battle of El Alamein that begins on the 1st of July in 1942. State Department official George Kennan used the pseudonym Mr. X, publishes an article entitled "The Sources of Soviet Conduct" in the July edition of Foreign Affairs. The article focused on Kennan's call for a policy of containment towards the Soviet Union and established the foundation for much of America's early Cold War foreign policy. He was then serving as the U.S. chargé d'affaires in Moscow and wrote his famous long telegram to the Department of State. It was in the missive that he condemned the communist leadership of the Soviet Union and called on the U.S. to forcefully resist Russian expansion. Encouraged by friends and colleagues, Keenan refined the telegram into this article. Mr. X article on Soviet Union appears in Foreign Affairs on the 1st of July in 1947. On the 1st of July 1963, the U.S. Postal Service introduces the Zone Improvement Plan as part of a plan to improve the speed of mail delivery, inaugurating the use of machine-readable zip codes to facilitate the efficient sorting of mail at a national level. The idea wasn't totally new. The post office had earlier created numbered zones for more than 100 urban areas around the country, but in the post-World War II boom, the system quickly became inadequate, and between 1943 and 62, annual mail volume doubled from 33 billion to 66.5 billion pieces, and the average mailed letter passed through an average of 17 sorting stops. Suburbs were sprouting exponentially, and mail transport was shifting from railway to highway and air, making old urban hub systems obsolete. And the U.S. Post Office introduced zip codes on today's date, the 1st of July in 1963. And on the 1st of July 1972, the first standalone issue of the feminist publication Ms. Magazine debuts, and the issue sells out quickly. Launched during an era when male-run women's magazines typically focused on topics like getting and keeping a man, beauty regimens, recipes, and parenting, Ms. addressed weighty issues like economic inequality and reproductive rights head-on, seeking to engage and empower women in all aspects of their lives. Its founder, Gloria Steinman, and Dorothy Pittman Hughes vowed to translate a movement into a magazine. Critics abounded, and President Nixon, in a conversation with advisor Henry Kissinger, using crude language to insult that publication. The first standalone issue of Ms. Magazine was published on today's date in the year 1972. And despite decades of ownership changes, financial insecurity, and resistance from advertisers, Ms. celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2022. On the 1st of July 1979, the first personal stereo cassette player called the Sony Walkman debuts for sale. It would spark a revolution in portable electronics. The transistor radio had been the first technological marvel to put music literally into consumers' hands in the mid-50s. It was cheap, it was reliable, and it was portable. But it could never even approximate the sound quality of a record being played on a home stereo. It was, however, the only technology available to on-the-go music lovers until the Walkman appeared. The Sony Walkman didn't represent a breakthrough in technology so much as it did a breakthrough in imagination. Every element of the Walkman was already in production or testing as part of some other device when Sony's legendary chairman, Masaru Ibuka, made a special request in early 1979. He was a music lover who traveled frequently and was already in the habit of carrying one of his company's portable stereo tape recorders with him on international flights. But the Sony TC-D5 was a heavy device that was in no way portable by modern standards, so he asked his then deputy if he could cobble together something better. Working with the company's existing Pressman product, a portable mono-aural tape recorder that was popular with journalists, he had a playback-only stereo device rigged up in time for his next trans-Pacific flight. And even though this proto-Walkman required large earmuff-like headphones and custom-made batteries, which of course ran out midway, it impressed the Sony chairman tremendously with its sound quality and portability. The first Sony Walkman went on sale on the 1st of July in the year 1979. After that breakneck development phase of only 4 months, Sony engineers had this product ready for market at 30,000 yens, which is approximately $150 in 1979. On the 1st of July 1984, the Motion Picture Association of America, which oversees the voluntary rating system for movies, introduces a new rating called PG-13. The initial rating categories were G, that is appropriate for all ages, and M for mature audiences, but all ages admitted. R was persons under 16 not admitted without an accompanying adult, and X, No one under 17 admitted. The M category was eventually changed to PG. Parental guidance suggested an R age limit was raised to 17. And on the 1st of July in 1984, the PG-13 category was added to indicate film content with a higher level of intensity. The content of a PG-13 film may be inappropriate for children under the 13 years old and may contain very strong language, nudity, strong, mildly bloody violence, or mild drug conduct. And on the 10th of August in 1984, the action film Red Dawn, starring Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, became the first ever PG-13 movie to be released in theaters. So it was on today's date in 1984 that the Motion Picture Association of America introduced the PG-13 category. At midnight on the 1st of July 1997, Hong Kong reverts to Chinese rule in a ceremony attended by British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Prince Charles of Wales, Chinese President Jiang Zemin, and U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. A few thousand Hong Kongers protested that turnover, which was otherwise celebratory and peaceful. Britain had invaded China to crush opposition to its interference in the country's economic, social, and political affairs, and one of Britain's first acts of the war was to occupy Hong Kong, a sparsely inhabited island off the coast of southeast China. In 1841, China ceded the island to the British with the signing of the Convention of Chunpi, and in 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was signed, formally ending the First Opium War. But it was on today's date in 1997 that Hong Kong reverted to Chinese rule in this ceremony. In 2019, the massive pro-democracy protests broke out in Hong Kong over growing oppression from mainland China, and scores of people in academia, media, as well as pro-democracy activists were arrested amid crackdowns that happened in 2019. A female employee at a Colorado resort goes to the police to file sexual misconduct charges against basketball star Kobe Bryant. On the 1st of July in 2003, a few days later, an arrest warrant was issued for him, and the ensuing case generated a media frenzy. He checked into the lodge and spa in Edwards, Colorado, near Vail, and the 24-year-old Los Angeles Lakers guard was scheduled to have knee surgery the following day. A 19-year-old employee of the resort agreed to show him around and later invited her to his room. The two reportedly flirted. However, the accuser claimed that when she decided to leave, he became upset and sexually assaulted her. The following day, which was the 1st of July, she went to the police to file this complaint. He was questioned by the authorities and provided a DNA sample. On the 3rd of July, an arrest warrant was issued for the basketball phenom, who the next day turned himself into authorities in Colorado and was released on a $25,000 bail. On the 18th of July, with his wife by his side, he held a news conference in which he admitted to having sex with the accuser but maintained it was consensual. He was drafted into the NBA after high school in 1996, went on to play for the Lakers during the 2003-04 season, but faced intense scrutiny and lost many of his endorsement deals as a result of this case. The accuser, whose identity was mistakenly made public as a result of court clerical errors, endured media speculation about her personal life and received death threats. On the 1st of September in 2004, after jury selection had begun, the district attorney dropped that charge against Bryan because the accuser decided not to testify or participate in the trial, and he and the accuser settled her civil lawsuit against him for an undisclosed amount. It was Kobe Bryant who died in the helicopter crash in January of 2020. He was 41 years old. The last Thunderbird, Ford Motor Company's iconic sports car, emerges from a Ford factory in Wixom, Michigan, on the 1st of July in 2005. Ford began its development of the Thunderbird in the years following World War II, during which American servicemen had the opportunity to observe sleek European sports cars. General Motors built the first American sports car, the Chevrolet Corvette, released in 1953. The undeniably sleek Corvette's initial engine performance was relatively underwhelming, but it was gaining lots of attention from the press and public, and Ford was motivated to respond, rushing the Thunderbird to the market in 19 55. It was an immediate hit, selling more than 14,000 that year. And the success of the Thunderbird led Chevrolet to continue production of the Corvette, which soon became a tough competitor in the sports car market. It was the last Thunderbird, Ford Motor Company's iconic sports car, that emerged on the 1st of July in 2005. In addition to the powerful V8 engine that Ford was known for, the Thunderbird boasted all the conveniences consumers had become accustomed to, including a removable hard convertible top, soundproofing, and the accessory standard to most Ford cars. And the Beach Boys elevated the Thunderbird to pop culture icon status in 1964 by including it in the lyrics of their hit single, Fun, Fun, Fun. She'll have fun, 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 till her daddy takes the T-Bird away. By that time, President Kennedy had already included 50 Thunderbirds in his inaugural procession in 1961. And a T-Bird would also feature prominently in the 1973 film called American Graffiti. Thunderbird sales slowed in the 90s, and Ford discontinued the Thunderbird in 1997. In 2002, however, in an attempt to capitalize on car buyers' nostalgia, they launched production of a retro T-Bird, a two-seater convertible that took some of its styling from the original classic, and the luxury retailer Neiman Marcus offered an early special edition version in their 2000 Christmas catalog, priced at just under $42,000, and their stock of 200 sold out in 2 hours and 15 minutes. Despite brisk early sales and good reviews, sales of the new Thunderbird couldn't justify continued production, and Ford continued it again on today's date in 2005. Ladies and gentlemen, those were some stories from the annals of history that happened on the 1st of July. Today's date, as we get this week started, I'd like to thank all the supporters of community radio networks. I have huge support going out, huge thanks going out for support by Discount Power, Houston EB5, the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinza Law, My Kolachi, Ruchi Palace by My Kolachi, Shri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. Big thanks going out to all of them for their support of community radio networks that you listen to every morning. We do have some events that are happening in town that I will just remind you about, particularly in this short week. It is a long weekend. We do have Salim Suleiman, who's going to be performing the day after tomorrow. And then starting on the 5th of July, the 2024 Texas Super Kings start their season against the LA Knight Riders at the Grand Prairie Stadium this week. Ellen DeGeneres will be in Dallas on the 10th of this month. And on the 12th and 13th, we do have a leadership workshop for you at the Radha Krishna Temple. Great leadership begins from within. It's a 2-day workshop from 8:30 to 5:30, both days at the Radha Krishna Temple. And you can always get more details by going to jkyog.org. Wishwin have announced their Spellathon 2024 online national championship, and the junior Spellathon as well as the senior Spellathon all will be starting at the end of this month. And we would encourage you to go to wishwin.org to get more information on Wishwin Spellathon 2024 online national championship. And Rohit Sharma will be back here in Dallas on the 14th of this month to open his cricket academy, the grand launch. It's a very fancy schmancy affair that will be happening here. Now, if you need to be part of it, you need to call Shalu. Let me give you Shalu's number, 201-245-6299. This is the Hitman coming back to Texas. Crick Kingdom, in partnership with DFW Indoor Sports, announcing the Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma, all set to make its grand debut right here in Dallas. 19th, 20th, and 21st of this month, the Carom Grand Masters tournament is happening. And we do have a 2024 North Texas Job Fair, which is going to be hosted by Beth Van Dyne, the U.S. Congresswoman, and in partnership with the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce, and that is happening on the 8th of August. We do have a program called Yade at the Grand Center in Plano, and that's on the 10th of August. 22nd of August, the Wellness and Workplace Conference by the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce. 31st of August is India Association's 47th Anand Bazaar, celebrating 77 years of India's independence at the Frisco Rough Riders Stadium, and that is the 31st of August. And Brahma Kumari Sister Shivani, living a life of hope, light, and love. Join the Brahma Kumaris in welcoming Sister Shivani, a globally renowned spiritual teacher and motivational speaker. She guides us with ancient wisdom to bring hope and clarity in times of confusion and chaos. 8th of September, it's a Sunday from 2 to 4 at the Credit Union of Texas Event Center in Allen. Mughal-e-Azam Season 2, the North America tour, bringing that Broadway-style event to Dallas on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of September. Please go ahead and mark all these dates, and as we get closer to them, we will have more details coming up for you. This, ladies and gentlemen, will conclude my show for today. Today is an important day. It's the start of the month of July. The start of this third quarter is the start of the second half of 2024. We are halfway through the year, and of course, the start of this week. Wishing you all a lovely Monday morning. This is Shabnam Madgil signing off from Community Radio Networks. For those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.